All right, welcome everybody to Ben's Book Club for the month of February 2023, year of our Lord, the wonderful year 2023. Everyone's coming into the chat, everyone's coming into the group. Very excited to have everyone here today. Very excited to have Jen here as well. As you come in, tradition is in Ben's Book Club that you post in the chat where you're from, where you're tuning in from. If you can, you don't feel you have to, but we love to hear from where people are. We've never had anyone tune in from Antarctica yet, but we've got a German person who likes to tune in, and from Los Angeles, and so yeah, just type into the chat where you're from. Welcome everybody. And while you're doing that, we'll introduce Jen. Brisbane, nice. Judy, thank you. Yeah, finally, someone from Antarctica represent. Thank you, Judy. Just ignore that last little bit there. It's not a fib. New South Wales, Ulladulla, Upper Hunter Valley, Harvey Bay, Bathurst, Townsville. Very cool. Couple from Townsville. That's awesome. Melbourne. I love you, Melbourne. Miss you, Melbourne. I was there recently in Collingwood. I had a very nice burrito. It was delicious. Morisset, New South Wales, not answer. Oh, Judy. Wish you hadn't clarified. Gold Coast, awesome. Oh, cool. Jenny, hello. And Adelaide, awesome. So cool to see all of you from all around. So I'm very excited here. We've got a wonderful guest here. Bong, thank you for telling me you've been to Antarctica. Very jealous. It's a dream of mine to get there. We have a wonderful author here who we're going to pick the brains of. Hopefully, we've all had time to read her wonderful book, The Gifted Son, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So I'll read Jen's bio, we'll introduce Jen, and then we'll get going into our interview. So Genevieve Gannon is an author and award-winning journalist based in Sydney. Over her 15-year career, she has worked as a frontline reporter in Canberra, Melbourne, and Sydney, covering crime, health, social affairs, and politics. She was a lead court reporter for Australian Associated Press and has been published in most major Australian newspapers, which is huge. Like that, most people would just full stop their career there, Jen, but you kept going. She's presently the senior journalist at the Australian Women's Weekly, where she is known for in-depth articles on issues relating to the health rights and safety of women. She was named Journalist of the Year at the 2019 Mumbrella Publish Awards. Her first novel, Husband Hunters, was published in 2014. She followed this with Chasing Chris Campbell in 2015 and The First Year in 2017. And then her breakout release, The Mothers, published by Allen and Unwin in 2019, was based on the real-life cases of embryo mix-ups in IVF labs and became an Australian bestseller. And we're here to discuss The Gifted Son, her latest novel. Everyone, can we put our virtual hands together for Jen? Welcome, Jen.
Hello, lovely to be here with you, Ben.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. We were just talking before about the way your your breakout novel, The Mothers, how that hit the road, and it came out, was it late 2019? And then you were just talking about how you had to cut short a few of your events. Is that right?
Yeah, it came out very early 2020. So I think
Ah,
January 10, 2020. So exactly 3 years before The Gifted Son. And as the publicity was ramping up, I was getting really excited to be invited to speak in bookstores and go out on the road and chat about the book. And I remember there was this one weekend where I had quite a few events sort of back to back. And the publicist was quite not worried, but she sort of said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I expected there to be more people out."
mm,
And in the news, there'd been a lot of talk of this strange virus, and everyone was
no.
wondering what was happening. And yeah, that was sort of back end of March 2020. So it was just about to hit us, and nobody had any idea what was coming. And I
Oh
remember
man.
one bookstore owner in particular, out in Cronulla. She has this beautiful, really community-based bookstore, and she'd expected a really big crowd, and it was just this little trickle, and she was mortified. And I was just thrilled that anyone would show up because
Mhm.
you know it was my first book, and who am I? So I had a great time chatting to the people that came, but there was definitely something in the air. Everyone was kind of feeling very trepidatious about going to events that big crowds would potentially be at. So
Yeah, it must
yeah.
feel very different with this one coming out. Like you must be, I mean, I know we're still doing virtual book clubs, but it must feel very different. Like, is the air different? Is it a different sensation releasing a book into, the post COVID era?
It's funny. It's good. I've done so many virtual events, and it's actually been really fantastic because you can come home, and I've actually got I look like I'm dressed for business, but I've actually got tracksuit pants on, and and you
Love it.
can sit in your dining room and chat about books and chat to people all over the country. So um, it's really nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's one of the things we love about doing this book club is that very thing. Like we can all sort of get together. I mean, the people in the chat aren't even on camera. I expect there's a lot of pajamas being worn
Oh,
at the
I
moment
hope
in
so.
chat. Can you
Yeah.
guys give me thumbs up if you're currently wearing pajamas, please? Because we're in the comfort of our own homes. Just a reminder too for everyone who's new to Ben's Book Club. What we do is if you have questions for Jen at any time, just pop them in the chat. I try to get to as many of your questions as I can, especially if they're awesome ones to pepper Jen with. But yeah, if you have any thoughts, just pop them in the chat. But can I ask Jen about the mothers, which sounds like I'm sorry, I haven't read that book, but it sounds really interesting about the embryo mix-ups at the IVF labs. But is there anything in particular that you learned from the writing and then the release of that novel and maybe even reader feedback? I don't know. But is there anything from there that you took away and you applied to the writing of The Gifted Son?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and definitely because the Mothers was written in a real uh, sort of flurry, in a real hurry, because I had published 3 books with HarperCollins under their digital only imprint, and they were all very much in this kind of chick lit, young women in the, trying to have it all type genre, and I'd done that because I'd attempted other novels, more ambitious novels. And in fact, I'll talk a little bit about how The Gifted Son started out a long
Yes,
time ago.
please.
I made a first attempt at it about a decade ago, and
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, and realized that that classic idiom, write what you know. So I wrote 3 novels that were in that, yeah, you'd call it chick lit. And I really wanted to be printed and in bookstores, and my dream was to be able to walk into a bookstore and see my book on the shelf. It was so exciting to have the ebook deal, but it just felt slightly below where I really wanted to be.
Yeah,
And
you're
the
still wanting that extra level up. Yeah, I get you.
yeah. And I think as well, when people can't pick it up and see it in libraries even, they're less inclined to read it. So you're not, finding that audience that you really hope for when you write a story.
And it
And
was a
the
different world back then too. Like that was 2014, and it's 10 years later. I think there's lots more people who are a bit more savvy with ebooks now than there were even 10 years ago, right?
that is true. That is absolutely true. But the third attempt I sort of thought was going to be printed, and I worked really hard on it. And the publisher in the end said, "Oh, look, we're just not seeing the return
Oh,
on these types of books, so we'll put it out as an ebook." And I just afterwards I was so dispirited, and I just thought,
oh,
I'm just going to take a break. I got this new job in Sydney, and I moved up for the Women's Weekly to write for them, which was very steep learning curve, quite different to the news reporting I was used to doing. And I just thought, I'm just going to take a break. And I was investigating the IVF industry in Australia, and I came across this old New York Times article about this couple who'd gone to an IVF clinic, and they'd gotten pregnant, and they were so excited because IVF is really arduous, and
mhm.
they'd been through it a few times. And then when the baby was born, it was very clear that there'd been some sort of mistake because there was a racial difference
Oh,
between
wow.
the parents and the baby.
Oh,
And
wow.
they wanted the baby so badly, they tried to conceal the fact that this was obviously not their baby, but the clinic was onto it, and they notified the other parents, and there was a custody battle. And I
Oh,
could not
gosh.
believe that this had happened, and that sort of started me thinking, and was absolutely a true life inspiration for the
Mm.
novel that became The Mothers. So I feel like you asked the question about 10 minutes ago
No,
to
I want to
come
read
back.
that now though. That's such a good
Yeah.
pitch like I want to read that. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine what that would be like.
Oh, I know. I feel bad. I feel the poor gifted son. I feel like whenever I try to start talking about the gifted son, I end up going back to that story because it was such a um yeah, it's so amazing that that goes on and continues to go on. But
Mm.
I did write it very quickly because I sort of thought, oh my God, this is it. This is the book that is going to, you know, get me where I want to be. This is going to make me a real author.
And you were
Um,
feeling it like you were in it, it's
yeah,
hard to get that fire going sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. And there was definitely some, definitely like 3 a.m.
Oh,
sweaty in the summer apartment, no air conditioning, fire going on. But Goodreads, and you will know, Ben, as an author, you're advised to stay away from Goodreads because
hmm
there can be some very
uh-huh.
throwaway comments. But I did find it really interesting to read the negative feedback. And always, I think you should take that with a grain of salt and just, you know,
Mm.
people can be a little bit what's the word, not cruel, but I suppose they just don't really think that the authors are sitting there going, oh, what do people think of my book? They're like, oh, this was stupid.
Yeah, and I think too, because it's the internet, they present sort of one thing about it. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah,
I thought this, and I have to make my case to back up why I thought this, and there's not a lot of nuance sometimes on the internet. They might have enjoyed parts, but um, yeah, it can be quite difficult, I think, to phrase on internet reviews.
yes, yes, but I did find I did read a lot of the comments and take on a lot of what they said and really thought about the
It's interesting.
pacing and just how people are receiving the words that you're putting down and really thinking
Hmm.
about what you're wanting to say and whether you're communicating that effectively. I'm sorry, but did you see someone's having trouble with sound? Is everyone else
I can hear you
okay with
fine.
sound?
Yeah, I did read that, Judy. Sorry. Yeah, I can hear Genevieve fine. Do you want to check maybe your volume level? Hopefully it's that. Yeah, sorry. There's actually a lot of like I don't know whether you can see the chat there, Jen, but Kath is saying she loved The Mothers as well. It seems to have been a book that really resonated with people because I imagine, and knowing you're writing from The Gifted Son, you have this real knack for putting us in positions that are super relatable and then putting us in a position where we have to think, what would I do? I don't know what I would do. But can you talk to us really quickly, Gillian? Your question's wonderful. I want to get back to that one, but can you talk to us quickly, Jen, about the idea for The Gifted Son? You were just mentioning that it was long and you started it. And I'm just really interested in the journey to getting this book. It's printed. It's here.
Yeah,
How did
it
you
made
do
it.
it?
It's a funny one because it sort of changed a lot, but it was the first adult novel I ever attempted.
Hmm.
And it was and it's so funny, there are so many little kismety things that happened because Annette Barlow from Allen and Unwin, who we were discussing earlier, my publisher, she read it a long time ago, and she also read an attempt at Husband Hunters, which was my first book that actually made it into the world, and she sort of took me out for coffee, which was so generous of her,
Hmm.
um, and and sort of sat me down and said, you need to like basically get better. But she gave me a lot of really great advice and also gave me a Leanne Moriarty book and sort of said, look, this is someone who really knows how to tell a story.
Hmm.
But how it really started was as a story that I was doing as a journalist. I interviewed a young woman who had had an incident like we see with Jamie,
Oh, okay.
a sort of a life-changing moment. And that was the kernel that began my thinking around how people, when you have this split second and everything can change, and then what you do next is what's important.
Yeah, it was a scary thing to read. Um, sorry, we are. Can we just see if? Tell you what, can we just have a thumbs down in the chat if people can't hear correctly? I just want to see if. Hopefully, it's an isolated incident, but Jen, we might just talk louder just for a second. I don't know. We'll see
Yeah,
how we go. Um,
yeah. I'll
you're right. It's okay. We will adjust if
sorry.
everyone's saying it's a problem. Um, So when I was reading your book, there was a scene where you had the parents rushing through the hospital,
Mm,
and um, that was something that happened when I was a young father. My son fell sick one day, and he couldn't. He was vomiting a lot. He had a really bad temperature, and we took him to the doctors. They asked us to go to the hospital, and then because I'm a high school teacher, I was at a swimming carnival. So I was monitoring all these kids jumping into the pool and things like that. And then I get a call from Lena, my wife, oh, you have to come to the hospital. We've been sent to emergency. And it turned out he had salmonella meningitis. And it was a full on thing. Yeah, he could have died if we hadn't have
yeah.
taken him to the hospital. But I remember really distinctly that desperation and that running through the corridors, and then the flurry of doctors and everyone saying, "Oh, we have to do a spinal tap," and there's all these things going on. And yeah, I don't know whether that's the aim of your book, but it was certainly certainly you took me back
Mm,
to that moment where you feel like your life is on that really thin razor's edge. You know what I
mm.
mean? Um, so yeah, I guess I'm just complimenting you, but I mean, actually, here's a question: how do you do that? How did you go about capturing that moment of, like you were talking about, where life feels like it's turned upside down completely, and you feel just adrift in an
Mm.
ocean, right? Like how did you do that? Because I think you've done such a great job with this book in that regard.
Um, Thank you for that compliment. I think just as you're saying, my little brother had meningitis as a baby as
That's
well.
it's so
So
horrible. Hey.
just as you were telling your story, I was being taken back to our story, and he's much younger than me, so I remember it quite well, and how scary that was for my parents. And then later, I became aware of really how scary it was. It's sort of, you sort of are protected a little bit when you're a child. It's
Mm,
a funny thing. I think the first version, the first attempt at this book failed for a lot of reasons, which one of them was I didn't have those skills, the dialogue skills and the narrative, like how to build a narrative and create characters. But also, I think something that really changed between the first attempt and the attempt that now exists on bookshelves
yeah.
is going through some of those things myself.
Mm,
And the hospital scenes in particular, Ben, you may know this. Sometimes you find yourself in situations and you almost can feel yourself describing it in your head. Um,
mm, yeah.
Definitely. Um,
It's
I've
almost like
not.
a defense mechanism in its way, a little bit. So you sort of get to do something with your mind that's not just focusing on why you're there a little bit, I think.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I don't know why. It's just something that I've always done.
Yeah, right.
But I haven't had a one snap incident like we see in The Gifted Son, but I've definitely had those moments where I thought this could go one of two ways.
Mm,
And very much drew on those when creating the scenes, um, in a way that I sort of think how I couldn't have done that 10 years ago because I hadn't been in that waiting room. I hadn't, you know, sat in that hospital corridor waiting for that news. Um, that
but you must have
definitely.
a remarkable imagination to do that too, like I think that's the beauty of a book, is that we kind of get to experience these things at kind of like in a safe way. Like we get to, if people
Mm,
haven't been in that situation, we get to sort of go, oh, like I don't know if you find this, but reading certain books makes me feel very grateful. Like you take a breath and you put the book down, you're like, ah, like I'll
mm,
just go and look at my kids a little bit and appreciate them instead of just being busy all the time. Yeah, and your book certainly did that, I think, for me.
nice.
Um, yeah, you've written a good one here. Let's turn now. This I thought was a really great question from Gillian earlier. Just to, yeah, and someone's mentioned it in the chat as well. If you're struggling with the sound still, maybe try restarting. Hopefully that will fix it. I'm sorry that that's not working for you. Gillian said, wondering, it was really suspenseful, wondering who had thrown the punch, and then looking at how the guilt between the boys worked and how there was sort of anger, but then also understanding. And then there was honor, and there was also deceit. And Gillian's question is, did you particularly want to explore the issue of lies, guilt, and then the cathartic experience of truth telling? Like yeah, again, when true things happen in the novel, it is a feeling of relief, I think, for the reader. Is that something that you were aiming at?
Yeah, definitely. And this is one of those things that came later when you asked what was the inspiration. The first um, sort of the idea of writing about a life-changing incident happened
Mm.
way before the stuff that we see with the boys and the deception and the reveal of who it was. And we all know the backstory of why it was and why Jez makes that decision to uh, do what he does. And sorry, I said we all know, assuming that people have read it. Maybe they haven't. So maybe I should put some spoiler alert
Spoilers, yeah, and yeah. Sorry if
notifications.
you haven't read it yet. Was the book club? We sort of assume you have, but if you haven't read the book yet, um, maybe pause, or I don't know. You know what? Sometimes I like getting spoiled. I actually read or hear about what happens in a book, but it actually increases my enjoyment sometimes. I read the book then, knowing what will happen, and I can see anyway. But Jen, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Um, no, no, not at all. That very much came out of my experience as a court reporter, and not even my experience as a court reporter, even just as a student. You see it,
Mm,
you go into a case, and I remember the very first court case I ever covered as studying journalism at RMIT in Melbourne and wandering into a court and not knowing what to expect. And you hear the prosecution make a case against a person who has committed a crime, and you just think, this awful person, how could they? And you hear about the victim and how they are impacted, and you think, string them up, lock them away forever, this terrible person. And then the defense comes out and they offer the perspective from the offender and try and get some leniency. And I should say this is generally in the sentencing. And you hear so often, but in particular, I was really struck by it the first time I ever sat in a court case. You hear why a person has done what they've done, or the things that led them to that place. And sometimes you just think, this poor person, they never had a chance. Like, they've had
mm,
so
yeah,
many awful things visited upon them.
mhm,
The thing that they did, it almost wasn't them. It was all of that other stuff acting through them. And I'm so interested in that idea. And as an extension of that, I'd done quite a few stories with the Weekly recently where people had talked about forgiveness.
mm,
And I'd seen people forgive things that you would think were just unforgivable, and things that you wouldn't even think are eligible for forgiveness. And hearing them talk about what that meant for them, why they did that, how they were able to do that. It was just something that I really wanted to explore. And I've definitely had some reader feedback that they didn't buy it. They didn't quite think it succeeded, which is a shame. But I think
Sorry,
that
what do you mean what does that mean? Didn't
oh,
succeed?
just that they thought that they wouldn't be able to forgive. The family wouldn't forgive, or Jamie wouldn't forgive. It
Yeah,
seemed like
but
too
that's
much of a tall order for them, which I think
that's
is.
that's the thing though. That's on them though. That's how they've read it. That's they're speaking from their own
Mm,
viewpoint about reading your novel. I think you earned it absolutely. I don't think that that's. But that's the beauty of it as well, is that there will be different reads on it, right? That's kind of the cool thing. I had while you were talking, I had this. There was a kid who used to, because I'm again the high school teacher, and he just would not wear the uniform, and it was
mm,
just a constant struggle. And he was naughty as well, but it was just constantly. I was his year level coordinator, and I don't just wear the uniform, and it just blew my mind. I could not understand it, and I was approaching it from a place of impatience, I guess.
mm.
But then one day I just sat down with him and I was like, mate, let's just have a chat. Like, you don't have to take the jacket off. It's fine. Just wear what you like. But I just want to talk to you what's going on. And he talked about how he's always felt very small, and then he wears this jacket and this thing to sort of puff himself up to make himself
Mm,
look more impressive. And I was like, oh, okay, coming from a place of understanding, sort of, even if it's not forgiveness, it at least approaches a level of humanity, I think. Because it's when
mm,
we're just judging each other all the time, it's so violent, I guess. I don't know.
mm,
It's just, I don't know. It doesn't feel good to me.
mm.
Again, I think your book did such a good job with. Um, can we move now? Can we talk very quickly? Actually, no, what? No, not quickly. Jen, we're going to go in depth with this question here. This is from Gillian. Gillian asked, can you tell us a bit about your experience with consulting people about spinal injury? And I actually had a look in the acknowledgements. You listed someone named Jason Climo, and I had a look at his Instagram as well. So he's a real advocate for inclusion and disability activeness, and yeah, he seems like he's got such a big profile and a really great person to have on your team as far as reading. And then you had someone named Jennifer Ward as well. So can you talk about the relationships with those two and what it was like to enter this world and write about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was very scary. I felt a great deal of trepidation about trying to write from a viewpoint of someone who'd had a catastrophic injury that had resulted in them acquiring a disability.
Mm.
And it really I nearly just stopped many, many times. And I have to, sorry for my editorial assistant here. I have to thank Jason for not only giving me so much time and information and knowledge and wisdom and advice and his own experience, but also just saying this is an okay thing for you to do, but also being very clear. You have to be accurate and you have to be you have to approach
Mm.
it with you know, just the attitude that it's not my experience. I need to speak to people and many
Mm.
people. So he connected me with one of his care nurses. And then I also spoke with um, some wonderful people at Spinal Cord Injuries Australia. Oh, sorry, the cat's name's Cricket. She's very involved in my writing process.
Very quick.
Yeah, Spinal Cord Injuries Australia, and they gave me a tour of their gym. And I'm just fortunate to have people in my life. My sister's very good friend is a post-surgical physiotherapist, and she'd
No.
done spinal cord rehabilitation, and she was great. And just being able to talk to her about like from the big picture stuff to just little things like what sounds would he be hearing in the hospital.
Yeah.
um, and then my partner's sister is an exercise physiologist as well, who works with people who are being
Wow.
rehabilitated or who are undergoing rehab for spinal cord injuries. So
Mm.
I was lucky. I mean, I sought out a lot of expert advice. And Jason was like a consultant. He was with me all the way. He did a sensitivity read. Alan and Unwin kind of brought him into the process just to make sure
Mm.
um, it felt representative and
Yeah.
real. So yeah, it was great. It was great to get to know him. I didn't know him beforehand. I approached him through an agency called Starts with Julius, which exists to try and increase disability visibility in the media and things like ads. And he was great. And he came. I came and saw him because he was Australia's first wheelchair model to ever appear on a fashion catwalk in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a show at Fashion Week here. Was it this year? Last year. And I went and I saw him, and then we went out for dinner afterwards, and it was
Oh,
really, he's a
awesome.
legend. I love him. He's fantastic.
That's really
So
cool. It's
it was
nice that, yeah, it's so cool to meet people in the area that you're talking about. And then he
mm,
kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of, I mean, it's so generous too, right? Like he's so generous with his time to be able to talk to you and give you all this because I guess he's also very keen on having it be an accurate representation. So it's really cool. I think you've done a great job with that.
yeah, and it's all down to Jason. There were so many things, and sometimes he had to really pick me up on things. Like at one point, and this was why I really wanted Jason involved, but I actually used and like completely unintentionally used an ableist slur, and
Oh,
he had to kind of say, look, I see why you've used that word. Just be aware that within the disability community, that word can be that word is considered a slur. It was in a piece of dialogue, and he's like, it rings true, but also just keep that in mind. Here are some other
yeah,
words.
right.
And I just thought, oh my God, thank God, because I was not my intentional. I didn't realize it was a
Hmm.
slur. And as soon as I thought about it for 1 second, I was like, oh my God, of course it is. But it's just a word that's, people use all the time, without really thinking about what it
Hmm.
means. And I
You
think
didn't
that
think to,
Jason,
you didn't
sorry,
think to sort of, did you ever toy with leaving it and then having a scene where they were sort of discussing, its use and how it is a slur. You know what I mean? Like you could have gone the other way with it too.
yeah, Jason actually suggested that, but it was quite, it was sort of like final read
Yeah, so it wouldn't have really, yeah, you
stages,
could
so
have done that big.
it would have
Yeah,
required a lot of unpicking and so
yeah,
forth.
that's fair.
But it probably that would have been useful.
Yeah, no, it's just it's a very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting the world we live in regard to representation. It's
Mm.
very good to be sensitive, and it's a difficult thing, because you don't want to be perpetuating slurs, but also novels are supposed to sort of point out how bad things are, but it's also it's not your job anyway. I won't go into all that. It's
It's
very
kind of
tricky. I think you've done a very good job, and it's wise to rely on a person like Jason, I think. So well done. I want to talk very quickly. We're getting so many awesome questions here in the chat, but I do want to ask this question because it was the first thing that struck me, that when Jamie is originally struck, I thought, I don't know whether it's just from movies or TV shows that I watched, but I thought we'd blink and then he'd be waking up in the hospital. But no, you took us on this sort of this spiritual journey, and I hadn't thought that you'd go there. And then I also thought that might be it, but then it was like a theme, and it kept coming back
Mm.
about your relationship to your history. And I just thought it was so interesting. And I wanted to ask where that came from and how you think about the world in regard to your own spirituality, if that's affected it or not. Or I'm just really curious about that aspect of the novel.
Yeah, great question. That's actually the sort of, when I talked before about the kernel of inspiration, that's kind of what it was. So this woman that I'd spoken to, and sometimes I feel like maybe I shouldn't tell the story because the book is not really anything to do with her. It's more, it just got me thinking. But I
Yeah.
suppose I don't name her, so it doesn't really matter. She told the story of having this injury, and while she was kind of unconscious and in sort of having a near-death experience, she had quite a spiritual, transcendent moment that she described to me in great depth, and we talked about it a lot. And I
Hmm.
am not a particularly spiritual person, but both of us were in tears,
Wow.
and it's really stayed with me. And I did a little bit of research into near-death experiences, and a lot of what I read and heard, because I was listening to interviews about it, um, fed into Jamie's experience. It's meant to be, I guess, a near-death experience. But I think part of the reason the story she told me resonated so much, it's kind of weird. I faint a lot. I have really low blood pressure. I faint
Oh.
all the time, and it's really embarrassing. I've fainted at my job several times, and once, luckily, I was interviewing someone in a hospital, so they just took me down to emergency.
Oh man.
Um, um, but it's a really strange thing to lose consciousness just like suddenly like that. And my experience, I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but my experience of it is I always have what I guess are dreams, but it's really this kind of jolt. Like suddenly you're in a room and you're feeling a bit queasy, and the next thing you know, you're somewhere completely different. And my experience is they're always really vivid.
Mm.
And then the next thing you know, you're waking up on the floor and people are looking over you, or you're in a hospital room, or wherever you might be. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of all the times I've woken up, because I really do faint a lot. And so I think the vividness of that, and the vividness of
Mm.
her experience, was just something that made me think, God, imagine if you had an experience like that, and then you woke up to find your world completely changed. How would that change the way you think about your own spirituality, and
Yeah.
and how you live your life, which I guess is what happens to Jamie.
Yeah, and it's really, again, to go into spoiler territory, it's very interesting how you sort of cut through it a little bit, and maybe it was just him imagining, but also maybe it wasn't. And it was a
Mm,
really interesting towards the end there, where his great uncle shows up, um, but he's supposed to not be there. You know what I mean? It was really
mm,
cool how it was ambiguous. I loved it. Um, we'll go to the chat because we're getting some great comments here. I want to go all the way back to Carolyn Stockwell. I hope I'm saying your name right, Carolyn. But she asked this. I thought it was a great question. Are you, Jen, conscious of what the majority of readers might prefer in the ending? Or do you sort of stick to your guns and do the thing you want, or is it sort of a mix? I guess she's sort of asking, when you're writing up to an ending, is part of your mind going, there's going to be a lot of people who don't like this, but I'm
mm,
doing it anyway? Or do
mm.
you're trying to write the crowd pleaser? Sort of what's your process?
That's a good question. I sort
Isn't
of
it a
don't
good
even really
question?
know. Yeah, I'm having to think about that. I think I like the stories to have a resolution that make people feel satisfied, whether they like the resolution or not. I can't. I don't really think about that, but I feel like I want them to walk away feeling as if everything is quite resolved.
Hmm.
Um, with the mothers, I knew that a lot of people would be very angry about the decision that was ultimately made. Um, with this one, I always knew what the ending was going to be. I I didn't. I'm wondering if the question is arising out of a wondering of whether Jamie should have gotten up and walked out into the world and recovered
Yeah.
completely. That was never on the cards for me. Um, but I didn't necessarily think that is not a happy ending. I feel like he had a happy ending. It was a sort of a self acceptance, and
Yeah.
finding happiness in unexpected places. And that was something that really developed through my conversations with Jason, because he had he'd had a really similar experience to Jamie, which was coincidental. I didn't know that when I I'd read a bit about him, so I sort of knew his situation, but that wasn't why I reached out to Jason. He was doing amazing advocacy work, so I felt like he would be a great person to um, be the I don't know, the expert, I guess, the subject matter
Yeah, sure.
expert.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Yeah. And he's had his trajectory has been really, like, I don't want to use the word inspiring, but that's the word I'm reaching for. And so I suppose I wanted that to be Jamie's
Hmm.
outcome as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there'd be a bit of a problem with, hooray, I'm cured from my disability. Like
Exactly.
it's a bit yucky.
Yeah.
Maybe some people though, I mean, you could have written it so that Jamie doesn't forgive Mark, and that there's more of a vindictiveness against Mark. There could have
Yeah.
been. I'm sure some people would have felt happier with that ending, but that
Yeah.
doesn't feel right to me either. I don't think I'd
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
glad. I'm
like
glad for the ending you wrote.
I think I like the endings to feel. I mean, part of the reason I love court reporting is it feels like a restoration of order. I think that's what I like
Mm,
the endings to have. And I shouldn't keep stealing the gifted sons spotlight and giving it to the mothers, but definitely with the mothers, it felt to me like a situation where there is no happy ending. One person is always going to be devastated.
yeah.
But again, drawing from real life, I read about this case in America, another mix up, different different set of couples, but the couple that had the baby that wasn't theirs, they found out some way through their pregnancy, and they knew that the child they were carrying wasn't theirs, and they made the decision to give the baby to the couple whose baby it was. They probably would have
Oh,
had to do
wow.
it anyway, but they sort of partway through their own pregnancy opted into this accidental surrogacy situation, and it was really hard for them. I've seen interviews where they talked about how, you know, that it felt like the right thing to do, but that didn't make it any easier. And then when the mother was 44, after having X number of miscarriages and X number of IVF rounds that failed, she got pregnant by accident.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and that blows me away. And I knew that if I put that in the book, people would say, absolutely not. You know, that's outrageous. So I didn't do that, but I did find a way to introduce some hopeful resolutions. That's always my aim.
Yeah, it's a balance, hey, because you gotta make it feel real, you gotta make it feel earned, but you have to make it feel complete and
Yeah.
happy. But it's quite a difficult balance, and I think you nailed it. Um, we'll move to talking very quickly. I want to talk about the only reason I keep saying really quickly is because I'm always very aware. Do you know that we've been talking for 45 minutes?
No, I did not know that.
I
Wow.
know we're nearly out of
Okay.
time. This is where I just anyway. Um, so guys, if you have questions right now for Genevieve, please make sure you pop them in the chat. We've had some really good ones so far. Sorry, we've lost someone due to the sound thing. We'll have a look at that afterwards, I think. Can I say one of the things that I loved about your book was Tessa and Jamie,
Oh yeah.
because I don't often read books in this, type in this genre. Most of the novels I read is all crime and violence and things like that. So having just a really sweet little scene of two people falling in love as teenagers, it was just really nice, and I really enjoyed it. And can you talk about the crafting of that and how you made that feel very? It felt very real as well. It felt very authentic, I thought.
Oh, I'm glad. It's so funny. I completely, I don't want to say I've forgotten about that, but I haven't talked about that since we've been
Oh, really?
trying to promote The Gifted Son, and I'm actually writing another book. I'm like quite far into my next project, so I've had to kind of turn off that brain that's thinking about those characters and remember the characters in this book. And I'd forgotten about Tessa. Sorry, Tessa. Yeah.
Even the most important thing to me, Jen, that the thing you forgot is the thing that was the most sweet to
Oh
me.
no, I'm so sorry. Um, do you know? I feel like perhaps it's. I spent the first three books. They were absolutely chick lit. It was young people, well, younger than I am now. I think I first started attempting them in my mid-20s, and so not quite teenagers, but still very much,
Mm,
uni, fresh to adulthood,
mhm.
trying to figure out the world. And I wrote about that a lot. And yeah, I think I just wanted to revisit. I wanted there to be some sweetness and some romance. And I think, yeah, I think I just drew on the the tools that I developed while writing the first three, thinking a lot about romance. You draw a lot on your own love stories. I don't
I
know
was
if you
gonna
write.
say, I thought you were gonna say I relied on the tools I developed as a high school
No.
nurse. Because
um,
it felt very awkward, and I felt like those butterflies, and it took me back to feeling nervous, and it was really nice. It was really sweet to see them find
okay.
each other. I loved it. Um, I wanted to ask you too, do you think that you consider yourself to be an optimistic person? Because I would say your novel, I think, presents a case where there could be a huge amount of pessimism
Mm,
and negativity, and there are characters who certainly go through the depths. But I do feel like there is an optimistic sense to your writing and to your characters. So I'm wondering if that's true for you as a human being as well. Do you think that that's true, or do you think you hope that you're optimistic, or?
yeah, that's a really great question. And I think yes, but I think, when you go through something, when your whole family is shaken
Hmm.
by an event, and I've been quite indirect, but definitely something that really um, fed into the writing of those scenes was the death of my father,
Okay.
which is obviously a very different thing. But I sort of alluded to sitting in hospital corridors and so forth.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I know, as everyone does, or unfortunately inevitably will at some point, I know what it does to a family when you have to face these moments. Um, and yeah, it can be really, and is by its very nature, um, awful and dark, and
Mhm.
there are moments of real darkness. Um, but and I think this is what I wanted to explore with this book. For me, the salvation in those moments comes from how the whole family takes care of each other, and how you think about what you would do differently, and how you change, and how you
Mhm.
um, just appreciate each other more and look after each other. And that was something that I really wanted to do with this book.
That's
And
really that's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. It's yeah, that's a really good lesson that I think everyone can learn. Even if I think it's this will sound terrible, but it's those moments where you do go through those awful moments that you really do think to yourself, "Oh, hang on, look at all these things I have to be grateful for, and look at these beautiful people in my life." But it would be better if we were better at that without the awful bit.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't. I think I could be a lot better at looking at taking moments to be grateful. I think sometimes, which is kind of beautiful that your book's done that for people. I think.
It can be hard though, and certainly even this week,
Yeah.
um, we're both quite busy at the moment, and I do find myself thinking, God, we just um, not really taking time for each other. We
Mm.
probably will eventually, but we're just in one of those moments, and it's so easy to see how it can get out of control. And the Kate character definitely
Yes.
to sort of show that it's not that she doesn't care about Jamie, it's just that
She's
she sort of
busy.
takes for granted that he'll always be there, and she's got deadlines.
She's busy, and she's
Yeah.
living a life, and she's having to very true to life. You've done well here with all of this. Um, Susan had a question, well, not really a question here, but I thought it was really interesting too. But Jamie's magical thinking in trying to earn becoming well, she said, is really, really true to how the adolescence and a young person might think about the situation, right? It's a sort of hope coming from yeah, this a strange place, I guess. This place of, I guess you could use the word naivety, right? Or
Mm.
naivete. But also he's kind of doing good things with his life too. Like even though his thoughts are kind of misplaced, maybe the fact that he's living a fulfilling life, helping others, may help heal him as well. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I think it's such an interesting question.
Yeah, that was absolutely the intention there. I think I wanted Jamie to come across as a little bit privileged and just sort of unaware of how good he had it. And he definitely seeks to earn a recovery through through good deeds. I think this could be wrong, but I think often when you're disciplining little kids, it's like if you don't do that, or you won't get this, or do this. That reward system
Mhm.
is often employed. Definitely, growing up Catholic, sort of the idea that you know, you have to behave in a certain way to get things you want,
Mhm.
is a big theme. And that I sort of what's the word? I transplanted that into the Hogarth family. We see that Lillian is a little bit of a lapsed Catholic. Kate is a huge lapsed Catholic, but um, we would imagine that Jamie was raised in a household where that way of thinking probably still influenced the way people spoke and did things a little bit. And it's a bit more overt with Lillian, with her "so goodness to reap goodness"
Mhm.
that she's always uttering. So I did want to take him on that journey of thinking, oh, if I do good things, it will benefit me, and then coming to that point where he discovers it does benefit me, but not in the way that I imagined, where I
Yeah,
earn
that's
um,
nice.
um, yeah, I earn what I want, but where I just feel more enriched. Weirdly, that is a little bit inspired. I mean, it's not really, but I guess this person said it to me explicitly. You know, Costa from Gardening Australia. I,
I don't, but I'm sure there'll be people in the chat who do.
I interviewed Costa. So if there are any Costa fans out there, and
I don't know who that
actually,
is at all.
oh really? You should
No,
Google
sorry.
Costa.
Okay, I'll look
He's,
him
he's,
up.
he's got a big wild beard. He loves getting out in the garden.
I think I might know him. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beard rings a bell.
We featured him in the Women's Weekly. He's beloved by so many of our readers,
Can you
and
see the chat going off for Costa at the moment? Look
yeah,
at this.
he was feeling quite philosophical. He'd not long lost his own father, and it was meant to be quite a light and breezy chat, and it ended up getting pretty not heavy. Well, so I suppose, yeah, kind of heavy. And he was reflecting a lot on how the things that make our lives are like the footy club and the service to the community. And sometimes it can be a bit of a drag. You don't want to get out of bed early on a Saturday morning, but you get so much back from it. And that's definitely, what I wanted to convey with Jamie's journey that he goes on.
That's lovely. I love that note. Thank you, Costa. That's a great.
Thank you, Costa. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I remember once I volunteered at a school carnival and I fried Dagwood dogs all day. And it was hot. It was in Queensland, but man, I felt good at the end. Like I
Mm,
felt like I'd helped.
yeah.
It's where fulfillment comes. If not, money doesn't really come from that sort of thing. But it is a richer life. I like that word that you used, enriching. Probably got time for one more question. I want to, well, maybe two more questions. The first question: are there any characters in this novel that you think are close to your own personality?
Not one specific character, but definitely when I'm trying to imagine how someone would react to a particular thing, I try and put myself in their shoes, and that's often not what I make them do because the character's a different character to me. But I do try and like go through that mental process of what would I do? What would someone else do? What would someone different to me do? A
Mm.
little bit of Kate. Well,
Mhm.
really only one thing I think when I mentioned before about how it's not that she doesn't care about Jamie, it's just that she assumes that he'll be fine and he'll always be there. My littlest brother, the one who had meningococcal, um, when he was a baby, a tiny baby, he sent me a message one day, similar to Jamie messages Kate saying,
I remember, yeah.
congratulations on the promotion. And I felt so awful that he did. I was so glad and touched that he did that. But I also felt so awful because I thought, oh, he's paying attention to something that I've done. And I don't
Oh.
really take the time to pay attention to the things that are important to him. I can't believe I just said that. I feel so guilty.
No, it's
Um,
easy to do though. Like that's so human. I appreciate you saying that. Like it's so easy to do.
Mm, I'm very interested in what he does, and I have so much affection for him and hope that he's always happy and successful. But just hadn't really thought about it, hadn't turned my
Yeah,
mind to him in a long
yeah.
time when he'd done
He's
it.
doing his thing. He's sort
Mm,
of he's making his own life. You sort of just let him go. But then you get busy and you forget. Oh, hang on, I haven't spoken. Like I do the same thing with
yeah,
my own brother. Oh, I haven't
yeah.
called him for a little while.
It's such a weird thing. It meant so much to me that he sent me a message
It's
saying, "Well
lovely. Yeah,
done."
you've got a
Yeah,
good one there. Good little
yeah,
brother.
yeah. I should message him after we get off this podcast.
We
or
should
the
all do
chat.
that in chat. We should all go message
Everyone,
people that we love. Yeah.
message a sibling, yeah, or a cousin or someone that you haven't seen in a while.
That's a great idea. I'm going to message my bro. I'm going to
Mm.
do it. Um, and Mandy asked me how I have all this time and I also do all the podcasts and also a teacher. But that's what we were talking about. Like you do find fulfillment in doing things. Like I love talking to Jen. I love being part of this. So fulfilling things are important too. You got to sort of layer them into your life, I think. I wanted to ask lastly, Jen, can we hear, and someone asked this a little bit earlier, can we actually hear a preview snippet? What are you working on next? Is it exciting? Can you tell us
Yeah.
anything?
I haven't even. I mean, my publisher doesn't even know about it yet because
Ooh,
like to,
okay.
that's how I like to write.
Yeah,
I don't like to sell and then sit down. I like to say, ta-da, here it is.
I'm the same.
Um, it's actually, yeah, I really shouldn't be talking about it, but I'm just going to. So, here we go.
Men's
Uh,
Book Club, no posting about this afterward, please. This is secret business.
no, it's fine. I mean, post away. Let's
No,
create.
don't, no, Jen, no. They're gonna steal it. They're ruthless in the chat. I'm only kidding. Sorry, go ahead.
Um, it's kind of it's not a sequel, but it's one of the characters from the Mothers, and quite an unexpected and small character. Um,
Ah,
it's seeing what they did next. So
it's kind of cool.
yeah, that's all I'll say for now.
Oh,
But I think it would surprise people, the character that I've chosen, and they're not even big in the next book. They just influence some things.
I'm really
Um,
interested.
yeah, they appear in the first chapter and the third chapter, and then they sort of go
You're
on
gonna
their
call
way.
it the Ganon verse or something like that? Like you've got all these related books.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you have someone from the Gifted Son also make a cameo?
Um, I haven't thought about that. No, I feel like the Gifted Son's a different world, but
I was looking forward to the Ganon verse.
yeah. Well, there's one of the husband hunters characters pops up in the Mothers, so there's a little bit of
Oh, you
crossover.
did have the Ganon verse. Oh, it's exciting. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will finish up there, Genevieve. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you, and I want to say thank you to everyone in the audience as well. It's awesome. We've got 50 people here from all across Australia coming to listen to you and your book. Um, yeah, and thank you for the pleasure of reading it and writing of the book as well. I really had a lovely time, and it's not something I would normally read, but it's awesome.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you to your cat as well, Cricket.
Yeah. Thank you, Cricket. She's sitting up on the windowsill, surveying her kingdom.
Oh, my cat just had an operation today, my poor boy.
Mm.
He had his boy operation.
Ah, okay.
No,
So
I feel bad for him.
he'll be okay.
He seems fine. My children were very upset, but he's doing well. Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you, Gillian. Everyone's saying thanks in the chat. Everyone's loved your book, Genevieve. It's so cool, hey? And so next month to announce, which I'm sure you're all aware of, it is my book, which is embarrassing. But I'm going to be interviewed by Chris Hammer. Chris Hammer is going to be in this seat. I'm going to be in Genevieve's seat. I might even bring my cat. My cat's name is Mario. But we're going to be talking about my book next month on the fourth Tuesday of next month. So keep an eye out on Libby. And as always, actually, you know what? I'll do this very quickly. See if I can fangle my technology. I like to put a little bit of a link to the Ben's Book Club Facebook group. Oh, it's not going to work. But if you type in Ben's Book Club into Facebook, you should, in theory, find the group. It's got my face on it. So, but if you're interested, come along to the Facebook group. We've got 250 people there now. We talk about the books and we sort of post about events and things like that. So, yeah, would love to have you all get along to the book club group. But other than that, thank you very much. And Genevieve, I'm really looking forward to reading your next and appreciate your time. Hopefully it's meet in person in real life one day.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much. It was great chatting, Ben, and thank you to everyone for the questions. I could see lots popping up that I wanted to answer, but we ran out of time, sadly.
Sorry. Tell you what, we'll if you post some of your questions that we didn't get to in the Facebook group, I'll make sure I email Jen. We see if we can get post something on there if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks so much.
See you later.